My name is Abraham Briceno, and I've been working at Amplify since about April of 2020. And I'm here in the capacity as a product manager. So whenever anything comes up that's interesting from a product management point of view, I'm usually called in to help see if I can apply my expertise and help solve the problem at hand.
So, what is a product manager, and how does a product manager differ to someone like a product owner or a head of product?
Hmm. Well, I'll compare it to head of product. I suppose a product manager is someone who validates ideas and even more broadly a hypothesis. So a company or person might have an idea about something that might work in the marketplace, and so a product manager goes out and validates whether that is the case. So if a company thinks that they can sell X amount of widgets, the job of the product manager is to validate that the assumptions behind that actually work in the market. So you go out and test it with existing customers, or hire some research groups to help you create a focus group, or you're going about to make sure that that idea actually can stand on its own two legs before the company gets anywhere near investing any money behind it. So you're just really testing hypotheses. As a product manager in the marketplace. As a head of product, you're not necessarily doing that in that detail, but what I suggest you should be doing is you should be supporting your product managers to do that. So how do you do that? I suppose the best way to do that is making sure that they have the tool set available to do that. That you're leading by example and ensuring, with the benefit of your experience, what the best practice actually looks like. So that's the benefit of both your experience and what is happening in the marketplace, or what's happening in the industry in terms of what's defining best practice, and really fostering that level of collaboration, not just between the product managers, but showing the rest of the organization what product managers actually do. So the head of product is actually more complicated in that you have to make sure that what your product managers are doing, what your team is doing, and what the vision you define for them to do is actually very much aligned with what the rest of the organization is doing. So besides supporting your team, directly with tools and support and working, things out, you have to also support, that's supporting them on the front end, if you will. You have to support them on the back end to make sure that what your values are, what your team's values are completely aligned with where the company's values are, so that you're all working in concert towards the same goals. So it's a more complex job. It's a more refined job that requires, more softer strategic skills. But it's, ultimately very rewarding.
Hmm. It sounds like it's a hard role to define, really. You referred to some of the skills involved. If you were to be more explicit about the skills a product manager would require, you said some of the softer skills, but perhaps some of the more harder skills. I know you said validating hypotheses, so some degree of data analysis or some understanding of data may be of importance here. What skills do you think a product manager should have?
Yeah. Look, at the, I guess the base skills are patience and tenacity to start with, because you one of the great things about being a product manager is that there's never really any certainty. It's up to you to define that certainty. Now, when I say that, I don't mean that within the product manager's mind rests all the answers, and you should be sitting at the top of a mountain like some guru. No, you're getting your validation from your customers, from your target audience, from the market, as I generally call it broadly. And so the tools that you need are to be able to distill the information that you collect from the market and be able to present it to various audiences. Now, when I talk about these audiences, I'm talking about your different stakeholders. So you'll need to be able to communicate the wants and needs of your market to your execs, right? You need to be able to prove to them that there is or there is not a business case for actually marketing a product or a service to a particular audience. You know, after you validated the idea, the hypothesis. But you also have to, in turn, take that same message, that same core message, and speak to different audiences. You then have to speak to your sales folk and tell them why you're going to be providing this new good or service, and what differentiates that with the competitors, right? How are they going to speak to their customers about this wonderful thing that you're about to do? In turn, you're also meant to speak to, you know, the team that helps you execute on that vision, that actually makes all that possible. Your developers, your QAers, your business analysts, to help them understand what it is that needs to be done at that level to realize that dream, that goal. So I guess you'd have to be one of the biggest, you know, without resorting to a specific software tool or methodology. I think really the best tool that you can have is being a communicator and understanding to whom you're directing the message, which audience you're going to be directing that message, and tailor your message accordingly to them.
So what separates a good product manager from a great product manager?
I suppose understanding that as a product manager, no two product managers are made the same, and really it's the difference in knowing that the tool set that you carry with you can be applied in different ways to different industries and market problems. So there's a degree of flexibility, and it's really one of the reasons why I love product management so much, is because it gives you that degree of flexibility to solve a problem in the way that makes more sense. So the difference between a good and a great product manager is having that mental flexibility and that, I guess, flex, for lack of a better word, to be able to adapt yourself to a different problem, and not necessarily hold true to, you know, the top three tips for being a great product manager. There's no such thing. You just have to be able to identify the problem, test your assumptions, and then validate your approach with the market. And, you know, hopefully you have, you know, enough resources to speak with, you know, either Slack resources or meetups or what have you, to be able to test your validations, your approaches with other professionals as well. So just keeping that constant learning in place, and being able to recognize a problem and how to address or readdress a problem if the assumptions change.
Do all product managers manage people as well?
I would say yes. However, it's directly and indirectly. So, you know, and that's one of the great things about being a product manager in Australia, is that, you know, you ask 10 different companies what a product manager is, and you'll get 10 different answers. So in some places you will have direct line reports, which is great, and others you don't. Mostly you don't, the way I see it, but that's a very good thing in some cases, because it helps you develop those soft skills. It helps you really tailor your message for these people that you don't report to, or that don't report to you, to understand, okay, well, why would this person listen to me? How do I craft my message so that they understand that the work that they're going to do, or that they're going to help me with, is ultimately for their benefit? So it helps you develop that level of business empathy to understand what is driving your stakeholders to help you. And so consequently, you start crafting a more clear and concise message that ultimately trickles down to how you're going to be marketing your product to, or your service to your market.
Mm-hmm. I know that this is probably perhaps a very good question, because it's going to be so broad, but what sort of background do product managers usually have? How does one become a product manager normally?
That's a very good question. So uh, when people ask me what a product manager does, I usually respond that it's a jack of all trades because, as I said before, it can be defined in many many different ways. So um, I guess the main way I define it is just someone who owns the market problem. So someone who defines and owns what the market problem is. That could be for a particular service or a broad range of services, but ultimately that helps define what that organization is doing to fulfill that market problem. So product management is a very important, you know, role in an organization. Um, I suppose going sorry, and your original question was.
What background do they usually have? Like,
Okay.
yeah.
So my background, it could be anything basically. Anything that allows you to be creative in wherever you came from. My background was I studied applied mathematics, which doesn't, you wouldn't think actually lends itself to it, but the whole premise of math is to be able to learn a tool set, right? This is how you do X, Y, Z. um, and then you solve problems, right? And the problems, you don't know what's coming, right? All you know is that you have a finite amount of ways to solve something, and now you've got to try and figure it out, right? And that's really where product management is, and really how many other industries are, is just you're applying the tool set that you have, and hopefully that's enough for you to tweak to be able to get to a resolution on what you're trying to test, that hypothesis you're trying to get to the answer to, which it's doesn't sound like it, but it can be a very creative profession to be in.
Hmm. What sort of tools does a product manager like? What tools would you say are necessary for a product manager to use? And if you could be specific with some examples, so it might be some project management tools or what have you.
Yeah.
Like,
Gosh. Look, it would help if you go back to the premise that product management is about communication, and given that you have so many stakeholders to communicate with, a really good tool set to have is being able to visualize and be able to communicate visually. So I guess in the old days that used to mean just having really great PowerPoint skills. But nowadays it's a little more than that. You need to be able to show visually that the data that you've collected, right, from your customers, that you're able to qualitatively show your quantitative information. So what does it actually mean that you've spoken to 100 customers, right? What questions did you ask? What demographically, who are we actually trying to target here? So being able to have not necessarily be a data scientist, but be able to speak to the data that you have and be able to present that in a fashion, whether that's with Tableau or Power BI or whatever it is that you're doing, being able to have a facility to play with that data and present it to your different stakeholders in different ways would really go a long way. Mhm.
great. When hiring a product manager, what should someone look for, or what would be some good questions to ask to tease out whether or not they may actually be fit for the role? And I realize that
Yeah.
given that the role is so broad and it's so hard to really define, that this may be different depending on the context, but perhaps we can just try to find something
Sure.
that fits.
Sure. Well, I'll start with what you shouldn't be looking for, and that's industry experience.
You
One of
should
the
not
things
be
I
looking for that.
Oh God, no, no.
Okay.
So one of the things that I see a lot is, um, you know, tech company looking for, SaaS product manager with, this type of database experience must have, 4 years of I don't know, ServiceNow experience, that sort of thing. But they pigeonhole it into essentially what's an SME. They're looking for an SME, um, and not necessarily a product manager. So when you're looking for a product manager, and this goes back to my point earlier about product management still not being very, that greatly defined here in Australia, more often than not, a company is actually looking for an SME or a delivery manager or something like that. A product manager's job is to, validate a market problem, right? To actually determine whether a market problem exists and see if there's any point investing any further money into it. And if there is, basically running with that idea and developing a way to, market that and build all the, the foundations and framework that goes along with releasing a product or service into market. So I would say that's what you should not be looking for. What you should be looking for is how many ways has this product manager actually employed their tool set across different industries, and what have they done there? How have they, if you're in software, how have they, built a software product from the ground up? How have they increased usage, right? What were the metrics that they used to measure how well that they did, right? How are the sales tracked? All these different things. It's about measurement, right? How did they apply their knowledge across different problem sets to achieve the desired results? Not necessarily, how many years did you spend getting to really know ServiceNow? I don't really care about that. No one should really care about that. They should really care, what was the goal of using ServiceNow, and how did you reach that goal within that specified amount of time, and how did you do it, right?